Right, let's talk film reviews because it's Thursday and it is almost the weekend. If your plan for the weekend is to put your feet up and watch a film, then this is what you need to listen to. And I can say I'm delighted to check in with James Luxford, who is our film critic, who can tell us the ones to watch and the ones to avoid with their film review. James, lovely to catch up with you again. How have you been since I last spoke to you? Enjoying the weather?
Not too bad, thanks. Yeah, a little bit cooler, and I'm moving next week, so it's been a bit easier for packing, not being in the heat.
Are you staying in and around Stratford, James, or...?
I am, yes, just to the other side of the town, so not too far, but still getting those boxes packed doesn't get any easier.
They say it's the most stressful thing you do in your life, James, and that's probably why not many people do it very often. Right, let's get into it because you've picked some crackers for us this morning, James. We're going to start with your good this morning. Where have you gone with on this one?
My good this week is My Old School, a documentary about a Scottish schoolboy in the 90s who is revealed to be a lot older than he lets on.
Tell us what you know of Brandon Lee. Brandon Lee. Brandon Lee. Brandon Lee.
Can we just begin with your name?
You would have known me as Brandon Lee. I remember my first day at Bearsden Academy.
It was junior year, day one. The classroom door opened, and there he was.
Now, this story I am fascinated by, and I'm definitely going to be watching this because I love it. As soon as I hear something's based on true life events or true story, I am straight to want to watch it. This is a really fascinating story. Just explain to us what it was, James.
Well, it was a story that made the headlines in the mid-90s about a not-so-young man who attended a school in Scotland, and it turned out that, well, he was actually, instead of being 17, he was in his early 30s and had faked his identity. And, you know, that's sort of the central premise of it. But really, what it is about finding out why, finding out how he did it, finding out how he fooled the school authorities, and how someone who was so much older than they purported to be got away with it. And it's just gripping stuff, the sort of story that you won't believe actually happened. And I think it's a little lighter than the trailer, and you know, you might think, I think there's always an expectation of sort of it taking a dark turn. Obviously it's a strange story, but I think the pupils interviewed and the general theme of it is more one of curiosity than of sort of picking apart a tragedy of any sort. It's more about looking back on your school days and how this, you know, strange interloper came into the lives of so many people at a very important point in their life. And I think it's very well done.
Do they actually speak to the guy, Brian McKinnon, in the documentary?
So here's the thing. They do speak to him, but he refuses to be filmed. So his audio is lip-synced by the actor Alan Cumming, who you may remember from the X-Men films. And Alan Cumming was meant to play him in a biopic in the late 90s. So sort of, I suppose, plays him now. And it's bizarre reason. There's no real explanation as to why he refuses to be filmed, because he hasn't been on television before, and it just adds to the mystery. And I think the delivery of the film is so unique in that sense.
And Lulu's in it as well. How does that happen? It's a documentary.
Well, there's flashbacks, and the stories are told in the form of animation, and so characters that perhaps either aren't here or haven't agreed to be in the film, like teachers, are voiced by various people. And Brandon Lee, as a teenager, is voiced by Alan Cumming. One of the teachers is voiced by Lulu, and as character voiced by Claire Grogan. And it's a really well done and a fascinating means as opposed to sort of maybe a dry reconstruction. It's an animation that really brings it to life.
And I think one of the lovely things about this is when I read about this and had saw that you were reviewing this, I had those, I'm sure lots of people are having that thing in the moment as they're listening to this. Oh, God, I remember that. I remember it. I remember it being on the news. I remember reading the story, and then that will drive people to go and watch it. Great choice for your first film, James. I am definitely going to be watching that one. I can't say the same for number 2. Where are we going on this one?
My bad this week is Fisherman's Friends, One and All. It's a sequel to Fisherman's Friends, the movie from a few years ago, following the unlikely music group as they deal with success.
We are the Fisherman's Friends from Cornwall.
She's an Irish singer. She had a couple of hits in the late 90s.
Are you lost? Fancy cuppa?
Don't suppose you got anything stronger, have you?
I could add an extra tea bag.
Thanks to her, the black cloud has started to lift. Here, hold on. We like to do things properly, see. Put the jam on first.
There are rules for eating scones.
Ones we live and die by. Since when have fish fingers been sexy?
Now, James, I went to see Jurassic World and I took my 12-year-old nephew to see this, and this was the trailer that was playing before Jurassic World, and after it, we both just sat in silence and looked at each other and went, nah, we won't be watching that.
Yeah, I think it's well, I suppose like Jurassic World in a sense of a sequel that perhaps didn't need to be there. I didn't love it, I'm afraid. It's a sequel for the sake of it, which is something that really nags me, particularly when it just retreads a lot of old ground, not really doing anything new. It has got some warmth, it has got some humour, very reminiscent to the first film, but doesn't continue the story, just brings back the characters. That might be fine if you absolutely adored the first film, but to me, I didn't see the point. I don't know why you just don't put on the first movie instead of sort of seeing it being rehashed again.
Yeah, they're just cashing in, really, aren't they? Isn't some of the storyline they audition for a new member from the trailer, if I remember rightly, and that's the premise of it, if that's right.
Yes, I think new characters are reintroduced, and there's some of us sort of left from the last film, but I mean, in terms of the story being told, it isn't that vastly different from the first film, and that was just a little bit unforgivable for me.
Yeah, and I share with you on that one. I'd not like to sort of say films are bad, but I agree with you on that one, James. Right, let's go on demand on this one. You picked a belter for us.
My on demand this week is Captain America: The Winter Soldier on iPlayer Now, the second Captain America film from 2014, where the superhero uncovers a conspiracy at the heart of government organization S.H.I.E.L.D.
Most of the intelligence community doesn't believe he exists. The ones that do call him the Winter Soldier. He's a ghost. You'll never find him.
Join S.H.I.E.L.D. to protect people. Captain, to build a better world, sometimes means tearing the old one down. And that makes enemies.
I mean, this going back to sort of 2014, James, this was really where the sort of the Marvel franchise, you'll have a better view on this, they kind of found exactly where they were going with it, and they knew exactly what they needed to produce to make it ultimately box office. It was kind of like the peak for them, I felt, around there.
Absolutely right. I couldn't agree more. It's a real turning point in the Marvel universe because it was the first time the Marvel movies experimented with new genres. This feels like a spy thriller more than a straightforward superhero movie. And from there, you went to films like sort of Guardians of the Galaxy, which worked with sci-fi and comedy. It was a means of continuing on the Marvel universe by taking these same characters and putting them in different genres. And this was the beginning of that. This feels like a spy thriller more than a straightforward superhero movie, and just has some tremendous action throughout. I think it's not perfect. I think Robert Redford seems a little ill at ease as a mysterious authority figure, but 8 years on, it's still terrific.
And I think for me, I wouldn't classify myself as a massive Marvel fan, but this movie for me, and that slightly darker, slightly more sort of cinematographic sort of telling of the story in a bit more of an adult way, brought me into the Marvel franchise that I would make time to watch subsequent movies, whether what the character that was, because I felt the genre was moving in a direction which appealed to me as an audience.
And I think it really established Chris Evans as Captain America as the centerpiece of the Marvel universe that he would go on to be, leading into the big sort of finale of Infinity War and Endgame. This is really the beginning of that wider world opening and a darker tone, as you say.
Great choices, James. Now, James, whenever you come on to do the film review when I'm in for Phil, you know I always like to give you one in return, don't I? I always like to give you a gift of something that I've watched. And I want to share with you something that I watched this week, which was the documentary about Jerry Anderson and the Thunderbirds franchise. And it's called Super Mario Nation. Have you ever seen it?
I haven't seen it. I have heard of it, though.
Now, I watched it this week, and it tells the story of the Jerry Anderson and the growth of everything from Fireball XL5, how they started their business, how they went to Lou Reed at ITV, how they developed the puppets from day one, how they got them and brought in what they called Super Mario Nation, the special effects, how they started selling it as a concept to America, telling the story of then it getting cancelled, doing the movie which didn't work at the cinema, so Thunderbirds got cancelled. But it gets all the puppeteers back together, and it is a fascinating watch to see how that was developed at the late 50s and the early 60s and through the 60s, all from a trading estate in Slough. Can you believe that?
Gosh, I mean, it's such a big part of so many generations growing up, isn't it? Thunderbird, Stingray, Captain Scarlet. I know, me and my wife in particular, Thunderbirds was a big part of her childhood. So that's definitely one to check out. I think I will. That might be something I put on over the weekend.
Brilliant stuff, James. Good to talk to you. Have a great weekend, my friend, and good luck with the move. And I'm on next week, so me and you can do it all again next week on a Thursday.
Thank you.
Brilliant. There's James Luxford with their film reviews as well. So some great choices if you're planning to watch something over the weekend, because if it's raining, you might want to stay inside. Right then, let's also...